right, namaste. Today we're going to dive back into Dharana 25, and the focal point of the Dharana was about absorbing the senses into the heart. And in our tradition, that's generally referred to as the Shambhavi Mudra, although it is a foundational, aspect of our practice. The idea of allowing the senses, instead of them taking you out, they actually, your mind has the capacity to have the senses function, but you can actually identify more with the source of the senses. And for me, that's been the focal point of this dharana. We're going to start with a little bit of yoga. It'll be a slightly shorter session because I'd like to leave some room at the end of class for discussion. So this is our second time through this dharana, so maybe it's landing somewhere for you, somewhere worth sharing. And if it's not, then just pay attention as we go, and hopefully you have something to share by the end of class. So we're actually going to start on our backs. So you can go find a comfortable spot to be in your yoga space on your back. Remember, I don't have to be able to see you, but if you can hear me and know what we're doing, it's very helpful. I'm going to progress. Okay. All right, from your back, you can be in a classic Shavasana posture with the arms extended, palms up, feet just allowed to fall open. You can nudge the back of the head a little bit on the rug so that your neck feels long. And let the breath flow through the nose. Just laying on the floor is already a posture, if you ask me. I can feel the body decompressing. Feel free, if you want to turn the lights down in your space. Sometimes that can be a nice way to help your nervous system down regulate. Yeah, just the decompression of being on the floor is such an awesome experience. I appreciate it every time I do it. And feeling that subtle rise and fall of the navel. It's not exaggerated, but it's there. And just that little bit of motion below your belly button indicates that your diaphragm is doing its job. I always find it to be helpful. That little bit of rise and fall in the navel helps me find that little bit slower breath flow. It slows the breath down a little, and as we know about the breath, a slower breath is a breath you better absorb. The slower you're breathing, the more oxygen is able to assimilate in your system, the more your CO2 levels are allowed to balance out, allowing for assimilation throughout your body. And once you start to slow your breath down a little bit, and you can still feel that gentle rise and fall of the navel, you sort of have yourself a pranayama going on. You've got a thread of continuity of awareness happening that relates to the body and the mind and the breath. And from this position, it can be easier to encounter the dharana, because in this position, you might feel like a more relaxed, you might feel the blessings, these natural blessings of your body and your breath sort of bestowed upon you. I'll read the dharana for you. Blessed one, as senses are absorbed in heart, reach the center of the lotus. Blessed one, as senses are absorbed in heart, reach the center of the lotus. Notice how much easier it is to allow yourself to be absorbed inwardly when you're laying down. Of course, there's always the mind drifting if you start to fall asleep, which is, it's okay, it means you probably need it. But if we can stay in that in-between space, we'll stay in this position a little bit longer, but slowly drag one heel in and then the other until the heels are about your, if you reach down, they're right about where your fingertips are if you reach down for them. The heels are roughly hips width and the feet are pointing pretty forward, not out to the sides. The knees want to track with over the ankles. The arms can float out a little bit away from the hips. They don't have to like straddle the body. And from here we'll begin with some easy pelvic tilts. Tucking the tailbone under, you feel the low back saying hello to the floor. And then drawing the tailbone long and away from the spine. You feel the low back arching gently away from the floor. And we turn this into a gentle pranayama practice, exhaling as you tuck the tail and compress the low back into the floor, and then slowly inhaling as you reach the tailbone far and lift, arch the back away from the floor. And then arrive at what you would call neutral, where the pelvis feels like a neutral positioning with the spine. There is still a lumbar curve. Your back's not flat on the floor, but it's not arched heavily away. And you can test neutral by simply unweighting. Imagine the hips are velcroed to the floor. Unweighting the hips, meaning that you don't actually tear the velcro yet. You're not actually lifting out of the velcro. You're just unweighting the hips. And you should feel the hips naturally find a bit of a neutral positioning there. Then slowly come back into the velcro. And so that unweighting gives you this beautiful moment to find neutral positioning, a holistic way of centering yourself posturally. And then if you pay attention to that first 1% of the movement, that deep core activation, you can easily start to keep lifting with that same kind of sensitivity. The hips keep rising away from the floor, almost like they were levitating, almost like they were being drawn up, anti-gravity, and you'll naturally start to feel a beneficial height for those hips. You'll feel the hip flexors getting a slight stretch, you'll feel the glutes turning on, and you'll feel the benefits, and you'll know how high up to go for you. And then if you can maintain that steadiness, that continuity of focus as you slowly lay the spine back down onto the floor, vertebrae by vertebrae, and then allow the pelvis to land. The decompression can occur again. Space in that SI joint. The spine sits in your pelvis, at the back of your pelvis, the SI joint. So everything on the top half of your body connects in to the bottom half of your body at this one V-shaped joint that you're massaging right now with your work. And so take your time. You have that 1% effort that allows you to unvelcro the hips from the floor just barely. You feel like the posture, the tone across the midsection, and then you can keep lifting from there very simply. Again, you'll know how high to lift and feel the glutes, feel the hamstrings, the backs of your legs, the backs of your hips engaging to lift you up. It's a nice feeling. Those are good muscles to turn on. They're atrophied in a lot of us. And then slowly the spine peels back down to the floor. And just take your time with it. We're going to do one more repetition, but just let your spine lay all the way down. Pelvis decompresses. Might be nice to do a little wiggle there on the sacrum. Wiggling on the sacrum can be a nice way to release just residual tension that resides in this pretty powerful joint. The joint doesn't really move like a normal joint. It has gyroscopic movement. If you want to know what gyroscopic movement is, lift one hip a little bit away from the floor and then let it come down and lift the other one. So it's almost like you're imitating walking or wagging your tail a little. That wagging of the tail, brushing your tail against the floor, that's gyroscopic movement. One of the best ways to massage and decompress the SI joint is actually by walking. It's a really nice way to bring space and, um, what would you say, blood flow perhaps to this joint that really carries us. And then one more time, unvelcroing hips, slowly lifting up. And find that support from the hamstrings and the glutes. There's a gentle drawing backwards of the heels towards the shoulders. You should feel a lot of support across your whole back section without any one muscle doing the work. And then we're going to unweight one foot. The foot's not going to leave the floor. You're just going to unweight it, and you'll feel the opposite foot take the weight and that glute on the opposite side. And then slowly back through middle, and then unweight opposite foot. So it's very gentle work, but it's actually loading the work all into one side and then the other. And so just do this a couple of times. You could call this marching your feet, but we're not really lifting the other foot off the floor. You don't have to do that to have this effect, just to keep you more in the body. And then both feet can support you when you feel like you've balanced it out. Laying that spine down one more time, nice and slow. Let the pelvis land and have that decompression moment. Little wiggle in your pelvis when you get there. Just a little wagging your tail into the floor and actually massaging that SI joint. And then we'll give the knees a hug. This can be different for everybody. You know, you can grab around the shins, you could hug them into the elbows, and then from there, just a little easy side to side action. Rocking, decompressing your spine, and see if you can get the neck and head to follow you a little bit as you rock, so that you're inspiring that looseness through your spine. Let the knees float up and away, and just draw a couple of circles with the knees, classic sacrum circles. You can use your hands at first, but it could actually be nice for your core awareness to not use your hands. And that tends to just put that little bit of tone back into your midsection. If you like, you can gently lift the shins a little bit as you're circling to, again, add a little bit more tone to the midsection, and reversing direction if you haven't already. As the knees come forward in that circle, the shins can lift a little. But again, try to be mindful. We're really working with the whole body. This isn't just about crunches. It should inspire length in your spine. You should be able to breathe. It feels very fluid. Knees coming to center. And the leg that's closer to the monitor, go ahead and let that one go long, along with that arm. We'll push off the other foot to massage the side body for a second. From the side body onto the belly for a moment. Hands stack, breathing into the floor. Coming back to your diaphragm, just saying hello to the diaphragm. And just to keep things even, go ahead now, extend the arm that's again closest to the monitor. And you're going to push onto the side. You're going to roll towards the monitor again, and you'll be massaging the other side of the body. Pretty basic, just keeping things even. Massaging that other rib cage. And then we'll come back to our belly. Couple more breaths here. Stacking forehead, or stacking hands on the head on the hands. And notice what you've sort of generated in your back. I bet your back feels pretty light. I'll bet you the glutes and the erector spinae muscles feel almost like minty fresh is how I would describe it. When you work slow and steady, you tend to get to those overlooked aspects of the muscles. You sort of stay out of the superficial, and you start to say hello to the deep foundational, and you might feel that coolness across your whole back line because of it. From there, the hands can come under the shoulders, and just because we're here and we have such nice backline awareness at the moment, keep the legs sort of long and firm, and draw the carpet or the mat toward you as you peel the heart away from the mat into Bhujangasana. And from Bhujangasana, pay attention to the back of the neck. Wants to be long. That almost looks like a slight chin tuck, but it's really about inspiring length in your spine. And you can allow yourself to sway a little to the left, feeling that a left erector spinae, and then a little to the right. And then we're going to keep this going. You're going to bring the hands back a little further and push yourself up away from the mat, back to Bhaktasana for a breath, counter pose. Slowly rolling up, you're pressing down through the shins, rolling up onto your knees, rolling shoulders back a few times as you do. And option here, can you turn the lights back on? Or at least 3/4 of the way up. Option here, we're going to tuck the toes underneath you behind. That raises up the heels so they're a little bit closer to your hands. Thanks, that's perfect. And from here, you can just reach back and find one heel. And just notice how that feels, and then come forward and reach back, find the other heel. And just wanted to break the ice on that one. We'll come back to that in a second. Hands interlaced behind your back, crease the hips. And then from here, you know I like to take my time with this. We're going to slowly press down through the knees, and as we extend the hips, we'll extend the elbows. So the hips and elbows extend together. Ribs keep pulling in, heart is lifting up. And hopefully you're just feeling a really nice conscious stretch across the chest that is combining with that tone in the glutes and the back line. You're training your front line and your back line to sort of communicate together, to work together. A lot of the times when the back line turns on, the front line's off and people splay their ribs open. Really no need for that. And slowly creasing the hips, creasing the elbows, coming back down. We'll do that one more time. Just take your time with it. Elbows and hips extend together. And just feel the work of that. There's a slight tone in the glutes. It's like a downward drawing of the tailbone that corresponds to an upward lifting through your heart that allows you to really extend and to lift up without splaying the ribs. And then slowly crease and release. Shoulders back a couple of times. We're going to take that right into a modified Astrasana. So we've toned the back side of the body, and we've sort of opened up the chest a lot in this work. And so you can bring one hand back. You can actually literally look back, find the heel there on one hand, and then slowly raise up the other hand. And just take your time with it. And as the hand rises up, the heart rises up. And you can press down through those fingertips behind you and draw up, out, sort of the spine grows up. And you're feeling a nice extension across the front of the body with even tone across the back. And slowly the hand comes down, and we'll just switch it. Other side, fingertips find the heel, and then just raise up slowly. Take your time with it. A lot of the time with Ustrasana, there's this like dumping back, almost like a jumping into the posture that's, I don't know, doesn't usually benefit me. Just finding ways to do it more with control in the breath, and slowly back. Okay, so that's one arm at a time. So this time there's going to be an option to add the other arm, or you can just stay in that position. So we'll go back to the first side. Fingertips find the heel, scooping up with the first hand. Great, and then the option is that hand can keep circling back to find the other heel, or again, it can stay reaching up. The fingertips are pressing down, the heart's reaching up. A nice easy way to come out is actually just to crease the hips a little bit and then reach the arm up. That allows that sort of takes the slack out and then pulls you out. We'll start with the other side. So the other hand finds the heel, arm reaches up, option to stay right here or slowly spiral arm back to heel. Fingertips press down, hearts lift up, and breathing into the center of the heart. Blessed one, as senses are absorbed in heart, reach the center of the lotus. Imagine that center of a lotus. Little crease in the hips takes the tension out. The arm can reach up to pull you up and out. We're going to come into table for a moment. So a nice middle ground counter pose. Just pausing here, pulling the abdominals in. You can keep your toes tucked if you like, or flatten them, whatever you prefer, and unweight the knees, meaning just the Velcro doesn't even leave the floor. You just unweight the knees. Brings a nice bit of tone across the midsection. And slowly release. And we'll finish here by drawing the left knee forward, the right knee back, swiveling that front leg a little bit for pigeon, tenting on fingertips. And then instead of emphasizing the back aspect of pigeon, which we will do a little bit, I want to emphasize the hips. So draw the legs together as if you're sort of wrinkling the mat between your knees. Draw the legs together, and that should get a nice stretch across the front of your hip. As you draw those knees together, the heart easily lifts up. You're welcome to continue with that if you want more work in the heart opening aspect, but I think we just did a lot with that. This is more about just helping those hips open up. Again, you can feel the front and back line working together here as the back of the body is strengthening and the front is lengthening with tone. Eka Pada Kapotasana. Slowly, hands press down. You look down. You can press back through table or plank. Pausing in table or plank for a moment. Opposite knee draws forward. Shin swivels a little bit. Back knee flattens. And then drawing the knees together like you're wrinkling your mat. Fingertips on the floor. Drawing the knees together. Get you into that hip. The front of your hip that is extending back. Blessed one, as senses are absorbed in heart, reach the center of the lotus. Let your senses draw down towards the heart here for your last breath. Bowing down, hands plant. Come back through table, wherever you're at. Table, one moment of unweighting knees just to counterpose. Get the tone on the front, and bowing for a final breath. You're welcome to add any counter pose you might want right now, or you can get ready for meditation. Either way, take a second. So we'll continue to work with the dharana in our meditation. Last week I brought up a couple of quotes. One was Swami Lakshmanju's commentary, sort of translation and commentary about the actual translation of the dharana, which sort of showed us that we're seeking this ether of the heart. It's called ether, like this ethereal space, this lightness, this almost invisible space of the heart that sort of lies between these two lotuses. And this space of the heart, it says, one whose thought is melted, focused without interruption. That's how we find this center point of the heart. Focused, uninterrupted focus, and melting our sort of mind into the heart space. This idea of drawing the senses into the heart takes continual focus, and we call it the Shambhavi Mudra. Shambhavi Mudra is learning how to see inside with your eyes open. So this was sort of our focal point last week. We'll continue to work with it in our meditation, being immersed in your senses, but also immersed in your heart. In that Babaji comments that it's easy to sort of close your eyes and daydream. A lot of us don't even know we're doing it, but it's much harder to have your eyes open to your world that you're living in, to the context of your world, and still feel that heart center. Sometimes the holidays, which we're just, in the middle of, sort of tail end of here, it's actually a time when, it's easier to have your eyes open and to feel that ethereal, somewhat magical space of the heart. You look around, things are decorated. They're literally trying to say, like, magic exists, and it's like hinting at it. If you look too close to the decorations, you're like, oh, maybe it doesn't look super magical. But if you sort of have that soft gaze of like the Shambhavi Mudra, you're like, it is pretty magical. Like if you sort of let yourself sort of soften and just be like, yeah, it is neat that we can go give our neighbors cookies like we did here, on these days, in the businesses that we work with, and have that exchange on this external horizontal level that hints at this internal space. I really enjoy it for that reason. Always trying to find a way to allow the holidays to tie into my work, spiritual work. And that Babaji reminds us, being in your heart does not make you more dysfunctional. It actually makes you sort of more aware of what's going on around you. So those were our focal points last week. I want to add one quote to the equation for this week. And this is Shiva Sutra's commentary on the Shambhavi Mudra, the idea of, again, senses open, but merging with your heart. And in the Sanskrit, this would be described as nirvikalpa bhava. Nirvikalpa bhava. And this means, like, nirvikalpa is, kalpas are thought waves, and this would be like no thought waves, or zero waves, something to that effect. And it's this sort of devotion to that space within yourself. And it says, nirvikalpa bhava, a calm mind, comes about by Shambhavi Mudra, in which even when the senses are open outwards, the attention is turned inwards towards inner spanda, or throb of creative consciousness, which is the basis and support of all mental and sensuous activity, all mind and senses. Then all vikalpas, or thought constructs, cease. When I read this quote, it makes me sort of like, it changes the angle a little bit here. From Shambhavi Mudra isn't just some technique that we're employing, we're trying to do to make our mind calm down, but the Shambhavi Mudra is literally a method of helping your mind calm down. It's like how yoga postures help your body release tension. You don't like do a yoga posture with a lot of tension and then hope it'll just have this magical effect over here on you. It's like you do the posture because it's literally constructed to help you release tension in these certain areas of the body. The Shambhavi Mudra, for me, and from what I'm seeing in the text, is literally a posture of awareness that actually helps the mind calm down. I was on a plane once, couldn't sleep. How many? Everybody, right? You're just like, yeah, of course. Like, who can sleep? We have these overnight flights here, okay? So you have to try to sleep. It's this silly thing we try to do the whole time. Oh, I'm gonna, you never really sleep. And I remember actually doing a guided meditation about the Shambhavi Mudra that helped me, where it was really about saying, like, hey, open up to the sounds that are going on around you. You're not going to stop them. Open up to what's happening, like the space that you're in, and instead of like trying to block it out. And it worked. I mean, our goal today is not to fall asleep, but for that effect, it really was to help me fall asleep. And I was like, wow, and that's so interesting that opening up consciously to the space that you're in has a very different effect than we might think it does. Because usually, when we're opening up to the space that we're in, we're like going out into it, right? We're like grabbing something, we're watching something, but with the Shambhavi Mudra, you're opening up to it from a different angle. You're opening up to it on purpose because you're choosing to. And that has a different effect. And for me, I think that's what this quote is talking about. This is the effect. The Shambhavi Mudra has an effect on our mind. So, without further ado, let's employ it and have fun with it. So you're welcome to, well, first I would like to open the door. Are there any questions or comments on that before we meditate? We will have time afterwards as well. But if anybody's like, if there's a burning question, go for it.
What does mean?
Okay, question here is about vikalpa. Vikalpa is a thought wave. It's basically a thought. Like imagine in the yogic tradition, it's like they actually visualize like thoughts as like vibrations almost. Like so it's like a thought wave. Yeah. So when you're meditating and you're thinking about something like that's not happening in front of you, it's almost like there's this like wah wah wah. Well, that thought has like a wave, like a presence in your system that distracts you from the feeling of your heart. Cool. Good question. All right, so because we're practicing an open-eyed meditation, feel free to turn in any direction you need to face your shrine. I'm going to turn over here to face our shrine. Or just a place that you can face that where your eyes can be relaxed. You're not squinting, you're not, it's not too distracting. And so with this posture of awareness, so to speak, we actually really do have to pay attention to our posture at first, because if the physical posture isn't steady, we can't really encounter the breath or the more subtler aspects of the heart and mind. And so we did that sort of wiggling practice on the mat today when we were doing yoga. You can do that same little wiggle and feel that sacrum and the hips and the spine, the interaction point. And if you can have a nice, smooth, relaxed wiggle, you can know that you're probably holding yourself pretty well, right? If it doesn't feel smooth, you might want to sit up a little bit, maybe get an extra cushion so you're not holding yourself up so much. So that little bit of wiggle actually shows you how, if you got that effortless effort going on. And you can let that wiggle go into the shoulders a little, and it wiggles the head, waggles the head, as they say. And then like a bobblehead doll, you can just let yourself slowly come to center, which takes longer than you think if you really ever watched one come to stillness. Hopefully that allowed you to arrive in a space of buoyancy and support. And let yourself naturally just let that next exhale really come all the way down and allow the inhale to naturally easily flow in after it. You can put a little bit of extra emphasis on the exhale, just letting it complete itself and making sure that we don't rush it. And then you'll have that fun opportunity of letting the inhale come to you afterwards. If the eyes aren't already open, you're welcome to open them now. And we have that soft focus So everything's got a little bit of a soft blur to it if that's possible for you. If that's hard on the eyes, you're welcome to just softly look at a point. We're not staring, we're trying to actually find a way to have the eyes open but allow them to relax. You can swallow and try to feel that swallow draw the focus towards the heart. Notice that the inhale can also draw your focus to the heart. And as Babaji often teaches, the exhale expands that heart space. And so the Shambhavi Mudra has this built-in sort of stretch happening. The very fact that your senses are open, your eyes are open, means that the slightest feeling of the heart is already an accomplishment. And so we don't have to overdo our work. Just being able to feel that center point of the heart while you're breathing right now, while your eyes are open, is a sign that you truly are churning, your mechanism is moving, you are growing. At any time, allow yourself to really finish that exhale fully, helping you find that anchor point, that center point in the heart. And then try to let the inhale come to you. You might notice the mind drift. You might notice it more readily because the eyes are open. It's easier to follow a snowball of a thought pattern with your eyes closed to get lost in it. With your eyes open, you might notice it happen sooner. And if you notice it in that very moment, you're given the opportunity to check back in with your heart and your breath. Of course, we always have the aid of our mantras. For example, hum, sa, hum as you inhale, sa as you exhale, to help further focus the mind. Blessed one, as senses are absorbed in heart, reach the center of the lotus. Patanjali taught that the natural inclination of the mind is to turn inward and to not be distracted by outer expressions, manifestations. Consider for a moment that this inward focus on your heart is actually the more natural function of your mind. Consider it might be the easier way of being. Blessed one, as senses are absorbed in heart, reach the center of the lotus. Can you feel the distinction between inner and outer? If you can feel your heart with your eyes open, you're sort of given this sort of vision. You can feel this distinction. In our tradition, we're taught that they're not necessarily separate, but that we actually understand our external life better when we're able to have inward feeling, inward vision, that we actually see externally when we look inside. We see more clearly, as Babaji says, the world that we live in. And so maybe you can feel that ability right now, that you really can do both. You just got to look inwards, and the external sort of presents itself. You can allow the eyes to close for a moment. Just feel that rich inner space.